What's up, comic and stop poultry bends? This is James with Midhunter Comics, and today we're going to shed some light on some of those books that have fallen so flat, so cold, but it's undeserving. We're not here to make fun of books that exploded in the comic book boom and came back down. We're actually not even here to make fun of books lower than the pre-boom prices. We are here to look at books with such historic lows that based on who that character is, doesn't seem justified. You could be a lucky winner of a Captain Carrot figurine here. We're going to be giving them away throughout the course of 2024. All you got to do is be subscribed, like, and comment on this video. When you do get a copy, make sure you send me a picture and I'll include it in the video. Once every copy has been given away, I'm going to make a montage. Folks, I'm going to start our list out with the Sword of Asriel #1. Of course, I'm biased because I'm the big Batman Nightfall guy. I've got my Nightfall collection, but it just also shows you that I know this book. This is the first appearance of Jean-Paul Valley, Asriel, from the Order of Saint Dumas, and it was a $100 to $135 book for like a decade. In 2023, for the first time ever, it shifted down to about $100, which I thought was pretty surprising there, but we actually have the last 4 sales of this book as of this video's date were all not only just below 100, but as low as $58. This is not a run-of-the-mill silly character. There's also not a ton of 9.8s that exist of this, so I put this in here because I do not feel that a $58 auction was the correct price for this book. Next up is an entry courtesy of Joe from 360 Comics. I asked him if he knew a couple of these, and he gave me honestly one of the best examples. X-Men 4 Omega Red. I'm not talking about when this book exploded, because it certainly did fall victim to one of the books that got big, but this book was like, you know, $150 to like $200 for years, man, years. And it exploded, but it should have come back to that $150 range, but there are some sales that you see where people get a little lucky below $100. Now, the fair market value is still like $115, but I have seen the below 100. This isn't Virus or Kid Venom we're talking about. This is Omega Red. Seems weird that you can get it for so low, but I will say, unlike some of the ones on this list, there are a lot of 9.8s of those out there. This was a heavily printed run, so it's not a complete surprise. Still, big character for a low price. Next up, we have easily the newest book on the list is going to go to War of the Realms, New Agent of Atlas #1. Granted, this book did fall victim of the comic book boom like some others, but it had come sliding down to a kind of hilarious low at this point. I even found one sale in a perfect 9.8 below $50. First Luna Snow, first Swordmaster, as well as many other things going on in this book. This should be a book, I feel like, at around like $80, $90. Frankly, I could have seen it going higher than that. It did have that heyday, but I think 80, 90 should be fair. But to see $50 is pretty wild in considering that book. Next up, we're going to touch on one that has always struck a nerve with me. It's going to be Batman 567. This is the first appearance of Cassandra Kane. Now, this is a character that's never really been in the movies. Yeah, she was in Birds of Prey, but we don't really talk about that. It is an unbelievably favorite character, and pretty much no one has any bad thing to say about Cassandra Kane. This is the most unhinged key I've ever seen. Sometimes it's 450, sometimes it's 180, sometimes it's 250, sometimes it's 300. Right now, the book's selling for $200 and even some sales less. It is amazing to me that a black spine, amazing character with no dislikes and a massive cult following in a tough 9.8 would be doing an oddball price like this. I'm not ever worried about this book because this book goes up, it goes down, it goes sideways. Give this a couple months, it'll be doing something different. Next up, we got to talk about War Journal #6. Now, this is an interesting book on this list because it's the first battle of Wolverine and Punisher. It's a cool cover, but this book went for years undiscovered. Obviously, it had its boom in the comic book boom, but this book went unnoticed for years. So it's really surprising to me that even now when people know what it is, it's still doing the prices from before the comic book boom. I still thought this book would have been untouchable under $100, but there are a couple sales in the $90 range. From the naked eye, it looks like it simply just corrected back to where it was, but from where it was, people didn't know what it was, so I would have expected it to be higher, and it's not. Next up, we gotta talk about Green Lantern Volume 3. Issue 48. This is the first appearance of Kyle Rayner. This is a massive deal. Some people's favorite Green Lantern character, the graphic designer himself turned Green Lantern. The Green Lantern's last hope, if you will. And it's actually a fairly consistent book. So unlike the rest of this list, somewhat similar to Sword of Asriel, it's bopping around like $130, $130. It has a slight boom, comes back around to $130, maybe $120, $130, $110, $130. But now we're talking about like $100, and there's even been a couple below $100. This, to me, is a book that I do not feel should ever dip below $100. There are not a ton of 9.8s out there, at least on the date of this recording, and it is a really big character to come out of the 90s. I think if you spend less than $100, you got lucky on this one, because I don't think it's a justified market low for that. Let's switch it over to Marvel and talk about Secret Wars, not number 8, although that could have been an option. We're going to talk about number 3. First, Volcana and Titania. So this is an interesting one, where this book actually, it had its time over $100, but mostly it's like a $90 book. Well, what's weird is actually we've had some sales in the 60s and 70s, and that's interesting to me because I do feel like Volcana is a character that's not really been explored and has some legs. So it's interesting to see a book from the 80s that a lot of people could probably make an argument should be over 100, be where it's at. I do think that that book deserves a little more credit. You gotta remember though, Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars was massively popular, so there's a lot of these things floating around out there, and thus a lot have been graded. There are a decent amount of 9.8s out there. That's going to be affecting our price here for sure, with supply and demand. Still seems surprising to me. We got to talk about Huntress number 1. I'm talking about the 80s one. This is a weird one. In 2018, this was like $250, $350 all day. No movies, no rumors, no pandemic, no comic market explosion. That's just what this book costs. Now everything's settled down. We're in a down market, and it's wintertime. It's the perfect storm. And whatever reason, it's like $150. Now, in 2018, I never spent over $100, and if I did, it was very careful about it. Now it's funny to see, like, with 2024 prices, I could have swung for that if it was back then. I wish, man. We've even got a few in the $111 and $118 range. 2018, James would have loved this, but it does seem weird for 2024. And it is actually one of the sharper drops on the lists in terms of 2018 prices versus now. It seems very unjustified. This is, after all, the first appearance of Helena Bartonelli. Second to last is going to go to Marvel Superheroes Volume 2, Issue 8. This is the first Squirrel Girl. Very similar to Secret Wars 3, we've got another one that came settling down after the COVID boom, but below its 2016 and even 2015 prices. There wasn't a Squirrel Girl movie that failed, so why is this awesome character taking such a lack of interest right now? Such a sharp decline from its prices from before the pandemic, and I'm not really sure why when it seems like it was unimpacted by the COVID boom. There's a lot of books that got way too big for their own good in the COVID boom and came roaring back down. This isn't one of them. I don't think this one's justified. And finally, Detective Comics 647. Seriously, that book. I swear, I've had better luck with 9.8s from the 70s than this stinking book right here, man. Every time I think it looks like a perfect 9.8, I get a 9.6, 9.4, 9.2. Apparently, it's the hardest 9.8 to get in the land, and there's motherfuckers out there dropping $50 on this book. This book was $150 to $200 for years. Forget what was happening in the COVID boom. Why the heck are there some recent auction sales so notably below 100? Are you kidding me? It's disrespectful to the people that actually successfully got the 9.8, of whom I'm eternally jealous of because I still haven't been able to get a 9.8 of that. First, Stephanie Brown deserves way more than that, man. Unjustified in the greatest sense. That $55, it's not even an outlier, it's a trend. We've had a few sales around that price. That's the first appearance of Spoiler, Stephanie Brown. How is that only $50? I think this list got worse and worse and worse, but that last one is easily the most unjustified one there is. What is a comic book low that you think is really unjustified? Comic book correction is one thing, but coming after these particular keys to a point where they're lower than they ever have been doesn't make sense, at least for these books. Some books it will make sense for, not these, man. This video was a lot of fun to compile. I will see you at the next video, and keep on hunting. Make sure to come down to Sentiment Depot Antiques and Collectibles, where I'm set up with all of my comics, located at 238 West Delaware Ave, Pennington, New Jersey. Open every day except for Monday and Tuesday. Enjoy 10% off from Wednesday to Friday. See you there.